How are you guys? Don't forget to leave a review and enjoy the story. Enjoy watching. The story begins. Adventurers are people who hunt monsters, work as messengers, and much more. Adventurers include swordsmen, shield bearers, mages, archers, and so on. There are many classes. The town of Sandville looked like a small town in the medieval style with low wooden houses. The road to it lay through a small forest clearing. The Adventurers Guild looked like a two-story building with massive walls. The main entrance to the building consisted of two tall wooden doors with a huge crest above them. Inside, the hero was greeted and told welcome to the Adventurers Guild. Then he was asked to tell them his name and class. Inside the Adventurers Guild, there was a large notice board with many different sheets. The hero, with a happy expression, said that his name was Yuji and he was a healer. He was a young guy with dark hair. He was short. He was dressed in a long coat, a simple shirt, ordinary pants. On his belt was a wide, thick leather belt. This is the story of how this adventure became a legend. The Adventurers Guild is an organization that finds work for adventurers. Inside the building, there were many people of different appearances. They were dressed in completely different clothes. Someone was in combat armor. Someone was in a hunting suit. Someone was dressed as a wizard. They were talking, eating, studying the notice board. A girl with blonde hair and work clothes, that is in a black vest and a white shirt. Near her neck was a neat black bow. Her hair was held by a dark bandage on her forehead. She looked at him with a smile and repeated after him, "Healer Yuji." Then she told him that this was a task to subdue monsters. And she told him to show them the emblem. He hesitantly pointed his finger at himself and asked again, "The emblem?" She asked him if it was his first time in the guild. He started scratching his head and said that before that the group leader had taken the task. She, with a smile on her face, pointed to a large poster behind her with her palm. There were 7 emblems depicted on it. She told him that from birth he was given one of the 7 emblems. She then explained to him that the characteristics vary depending on the emblem. If he has a fire emblem, it means he can use fire magic and has good physical abilities, which means the swordsman class is suitable for him. The swordsman class prioritizes physical attack and physical defense. Then she said that from the emblem of water, he has a talent for water magic and a strong magic attack, which means that the mage class suits him. The mage's priority skills are magic attack and magic defense. She looked at him with a smile and pointed her finger up, saying that to receive the task, it was necessary to show the emblem. He sadly closed his eyes and said that he understood. Then he said, "Okay." After that, he looked at her gloomily, stretched his hand up, and said that he had the emblem of nothingness. On his hand was an image of several waves. She looked at him with a smile, and then her face distorted. She asked him again in fear. Looking into her eyes, he asked, "Are there any problems?" She asked him furiously, "Is he serious?" And she shouted that there are a whole bunch of problems. She told him that in this world, every adventurer has their own special qualities that make them exceptional. The emblem of nothingness is the only emblem that does not have an element. This emblem has no specialty, and all characteristics are at a mediocre level. He stood there looking at her gloomily, holding the hand with the emblem with his hand. He is useless in the world of adventurers with the emblem of the inferior. Those present in the guild turned around in surprise and looked at him attentively. They discussed among themselves, adventurers with the emblem of the inferior? Another adventurer said that if he wanted to commit suicide, he should go somewhere else. And he added that they don't need useless people here. One of the men was furiously saying that he was angry that he was here among them. Another man shouted at him to go away. Then he insulted him by saying that he was inferior. He looked ahead without emotion, thinking that, yes, it was always like this in the guild. He clenched his hand on which was the emblem of non-existence into a fist. He remembered what happened last night at the bar. The bar building looked like a small, low building with a big sign and light doors. From inside, there was a shout, "You're fired." Seriously? In response to the shout, they answered, "Yes, seriously." These words were addressed to Yuji. A man with a combed hairdo was holding a wooden glass in his hands. He was dressed in armor and had a fur collar on his neck. He was drunk and cheerfully looking ahead shouted for him to get out of his group. It was the leader of the S-rank Death Flag groups named Zenist. MC furiously shouted that he has been working in this group for 3 years. Then he furiously asked him, so he repaid all his efforts to his comrade? He loudly asked again, "Comrade?" After that, he laughed, and then he turned to the guy standing behind him, calling him Ark, and asked him to tell what he thought of his former elder. Ark obediently told him, as you say. Ark was a member of the Death Flag. He said sorry with a displeased expression. They discussed everything thoroughly with the group. He told him that MC always healed their wounds, carried their luggage. He added that they were thinking whether it was really possible to kick him out like that. Yuji addressed him by calling him by name, thereby interrupting him. Then Ark said with a furious cry that he had decided that such a tool could be thrown far away. He laughed loudly and, with a wild expression, asked, "Did he consider them comrades?" Then he shouted that none of them thought so. They looked at his face and shouted that he was too inferior. He looked at them silently, with a gloomy expression on his face. Zenist, lounging on a chair with a smile on his face, said that for them, he was more of a baggage carrier and a mobile healer, but now they were respected S rank. He explained that it was not the same as when they were E rank. He informed him that their reputation was now important to them. Then he looked at him wildly, laughing and picking his nose with his finger. He asked him, what kind of reputation would they have with a handicapped person in the group? He pointed his hand in his direction and told him to take his and his leave and go. He threw him a bag. Yuji grabbed it, and he added that he was still kind. Then he shouted that there were only copper ones in the bag, just like he liked. Yuji asked him hesitantly if he was sure. The one with a distorted expression on his face shouted that he was tired of him. Then he shouted that there was no place for a defective person in their group. They shouted at him to leave. He turned around and said that he understood. Then he said goodbye to him and left. MC was not going to tolerate this and decided to change his life. He turned to the girl behind the counter and said that he needed it. He asked to be allowed to take on this task. She told him not to be offended when he died. The men in the guild shouted at him that it was time to understand that he was the weakest. Another man shouted at him to buy himself a coffin. The environs of Sandville, the monster antelope looked like a mighty buffalo with large horns standing on 4 legs. It had thick fur and a massive body. Yuji looked at them thoughtfully and asked himself, how can he kill 30 of them? Suddenly, he heard a voice asking for help. He asked himself in surprise, a female voice. Her legs were spread out to the side, and her knee was cut and bleeding, and a sword was stuck in the ground next to her. He came up to her and asked if it hurt a lot. She asked him again with tears in her eyes. Had long blonde hair curled into pigtails and was dressed in she was wearing a long light dress and boots. He asked her if she had fallen down the slope. She only screamed in pain in response. Yuji brought the substance to his eye and looked at her through it carefully. Then he said that her leg was broken. He told her not to move it. The girl looked at him in amazement, saying, and he interrupted her by answering her question that she had not yet formulated. He said that his name was Yuji, and he was a healer who was passing by. She hesitantly said that her name was Lena. He approached her and created a magic ball, telling her not to move, and he would heal her. She shouted to him, thank you very much. He brought this circle of magical energy to her broken knee. She asked him, a broken bone won't heal right away. Then she asked, right? He told her with concentration, yes, usually like that. Healing is a spell that speeds up a person's regenerative abilities. It will take some time for the wounds to fully heal. Suddenly, she looked behind him in surprise. Behind him were 3 huge antelope monsters that were rushing towards them with a roar. These were much larger than them in size. Lena, trembling with fear, told him that these were chasing her. He, looking at these confidently, said, I understand. She shouted at him to run, and she would manage somehow. She explained that she wouldn't run away anyway, and at least he would be saved. He told her that her leg had completely healed. She asked him again in bewilderment. Then she looked at her knee and saw that there was no pain or scar. She asked herself in surprise, why did it heal so quickly? He looked at her with a smile on his face and said that he had already said, usually so, his treatment is special. He explained that he changes the very essence of the human body, fully realizing the state of her body or health, and restores it. She asked him again in bewilderment, what? He laughed uncertainly and asked for forgiveness. He said that, to put it simply, his treatment was on a different level. Furiously towards them and said that now was not the time to chat. Lena screamed in fear. He asked, would he lend her sword? She looked in horror at his hand, on which was depicted an emblem. She asked him, the emblem of nothingness. Then she screamed at him, no. She ordered him to run away from here. She shouted at him that he was a healer and couldn't fight with a sword. Then she added that he also had a mediocre emblem of nothingness. At that moment, he looked closely at the monsters running towards him and with one blow decapitated 3 of them at once. She looked at him in bewilderment, thinking that he had immediately healed her serious wound and defeated the monsters with one blow. Then she thought that his emblem was called the emblem of inferiority. He smiled, put the sword on his shoulder, and said, great, there are still 27 left. MC, holding out the sword, asked who he was. She looked at him uncertainly and said yes. Then she added that he has the emblem of nothingness, but he has such power. He asked her again, did she say strength? Showing her his hand, he said that he just didn't want to give up despite everyone calling him inferior. He said that if he was inferior in strength or magic, he tried to improve his skills. MC talked about how skills are important in the adventurer society. He believed all his life that if he worked hard, even the emblem of non-existence would be recognized. Then he noticed that those whom he considered comrades considered him a healer on legs. Owen silently looked away. Then he pointed the finger of his hand with the emblem upward and said that thanks to them, he was at least able to develop various healing skills. She asked him in confusion, "Various?" He explained that the treatment he uses requires the perception and processing of a large amount of magical information and to understand the state of the target. He also said that he learned to use it not only on one target, but also in an area of several hundred. He reported that he understands and feels everything in this zone. After that, he used the skill treatment. Detection in a large dome over a large area appeared above their heads. He told her that this way he could determine the location of the antelopes in this radius. Then he told her that this way he was able to find her and examine her wound. MC looked through the magic circle and said that he can also study one target in more detail. He used the skill treatment, analysis, and after that he began to see her body through her clothes. He told her that he can study the target's aura, her physical abilities, and weaknesses. Then he told her that this is how he found out about her body and health. She said in surprise, "Body." Then she angrily shouted at him, calling him a pervert. He shyly began to justify himself, telling her that he did not mean it that way. He scratched the back of his head and said that there is still a treatment that strengthens the body. At that moment, he took out a dagger. She asked him again in surprise, strengthening her. Holding a dagger in front of him, he said that by analyzing a huge amount of magical information, he can activate physical abilities higher than normal. He used the skill treatment, body enhancement. After these words, a whirlwind of magical energy rose from the bottom up. A monster appeared behind them. She was scared and pointed at it with her finger. She shouted at him from behind. He, standing with his back to the monster, said that with such a spell, even with the emblem of non-existence, he could become strong. A huge monster was quickly approaching them, making ominous sounds. Yuji applied skills, detection, analysis, enhancement. Then he looked closely at the monster from behind and said, "This is the power of his emblem." With a sharp movement of his hand, using a small dagger, he cut the neck of a huge monster, which screamed in pain. Lena looked at him in fear, thinking that he would kill her with one blow, with a dagger. But she had underestimated him. She looked at him and thought that he would not lose to anyone in this world. He stood next to the defeated monster, holding a dagger in his hands, and said that this is his treatment. She hesitantly said that she wanted to be like him, and he asked her again in surprise. She screamed in rage, "What?" Behind Yuji, a huge monster screamed and opened its mouth. He turned around at this and cursed, realizing that it wasn't deep enough. At this moment, Lena used the skill, Weakness Charm. He looked at the monster in surprise, realizing that the movement of this antelope had slowed down. He turned to her and asked what she had done. She yelled at him that she had slowed it down by loosening it. Then she turned to him and yelled for him to start. He looked at the monster carefully and realized that he was seeing weakening magic for the first time. Through analysis, it was clearly evident that its physical abilities had weakened. He looked at it in surprise, realizing that it was amazing. MC swung his dagger sharply and then turned to her, asking her to tell him about herself. Oh, she stood modestly in front of him, putting one hand on her chest and the other down. She said that her class is a sorcerer. Then she asked if he knew what kind of class it was. He told her that it was a class that enhances the abilities of others. A sorcerer is a magician who enhances the abilities of others. This requires talent, but this is not the same as enhancing your own abilities. She told him that this was true, then added that usually sorcerers were valued because there were few of them. Then she said that, however, lately more and more people were being kicked out of groups. O added that potions had become much more popular. He told her yes, then added that you could strengthen yourself simply by drinking a potion. Then she said that she had been kicked out of her group the other day, and he asked again in surprise, "What?" Then he said with an angry expression that her abilities were not the same as a potion. Then he added that the abilities of such an excellent adventurer like her were even more so. Lena interrupted him gloomily, saying that she did not stand out in any way. Then, with tears in her eyes, she showed her brush and said that she also had an emblem of non-existence. She added that she also has nothing, and the only useful thing she can do is apply weakening. But it is not needed if it will be easier to buy the necessary potions than to pay for an inferior one. Turning to him, she said that she thought that they were her comrades, but for them, she was just a consumable. He looked at her sternly. Tears were streaming down her face, and she said that it was a shame. Then she added that if only she had the same strength as he did. MC interrupted her abruptly, and with a smile on his face suggested that they create a group together. She was surprised and asked him again. He said with glowing eyes and a wide smile on his face that she was not a consumable, but a living person. Then he added that, in addition, she was an adventurer with an amazing ability. With tears in her eyes, she asked him in surprise if he really thought so. Yuji pointed his hand to the side and said that her comrades were just fools because they didn't understand how to use her magic. He turned to her with enthusiasm and said that she couldn't give up just because she had the emblem of non-existence. MC told her that in a world where they are laughed at, They will become the ones who surpass everyone. After that, he asked, together with him, will she show the power of nothingness to the world? She threw herself into his arms, saying that he was so kind. Lena cried, saying that all this time no one understood her. She tried so hard, but they still considered her inferior. She said that he was so kind to her. He calmly closed his eyes and said that it was because he understood her feelings. He added that together with her, they would be comrades. Then he thanked her. That's when he realized that even though they were laughed at, together they could become an S-rank group. They looked at each other cheerfully. He thought that, no, they would surpass them, they would have the best group. Then he began to scratch his head in frustration, realizing that there were still 26 antelopes to kill. She added with a laugh that she would help him. Suddenly, the wind howled above his head, and he realized that he had upgraded his healer class to the master healer class. The development restrictions were lifted. MC looked up at himself in shock, his mouth and eyes wide open. 6 months ago, he heard a mysterious voice from the sky. It felt like at first it was just the name that changed, but his skills improved. He said this while walking along the city street with Lena. There were many people and houses around them. She asked him again in surprise, have they improved? At this moment, he was a master healer with the emblem of nothingness, and Lena was a sorcerer with the emblem of nothingness. He cheerfully told her that not only his healing magic had improved, but also his attack and physical abilities. To this, she shouted in surprise and joy, then said that this power was definitely a blessing from God. Lena told him, this is amazing. He can use attack magic. MC modestly noted that, however, his attack magic is weaker than his healing magic. He turned to her and suggested that they go and report to the guild that they had completed the task. She answered affirmatively, then said that they needed to present evidence that they had killed the monsters. Monster hunting order from order to reward. The first action in chronological order is accepting orders from the Adventurers Guild. The second is killing monsters. Thirdly, you need to take material from monsters as evidence. Yuji took the horns. Different materials are used for different monsters. Fourthly, you need to deliver the materials to the guild. And fifthly, you need to receive a reward for the task. They entered the guild, and the local worker looked at them with glee and said that they were already closing for the day. She smirked looking at him and said, exactly, a defective guy. Then she asked if his name was Yuji, right? He put his hand on the back of his head and said yes. Then he explained that he had come to hand in an assignment. She asked him angrily, can't complete the task and came to cancel it? Then she angrily threw a piece of paper in his direction and told him to fill out this paper then. He quickly told her, no. Then telling her that the task was completed, she asked again in surprise. Her face distorted and turned purple. She asked him in confusion, in one day? All 30, alone, a healer with the emblem of non-existence. He answered uncertainly, well, yes. She leaned back in her chair and said that she didn't have time for his stupid jokes. He extended his hand towards her and said, no, it's true. She said then show her the proof. Then she asked if he had it. He asked her to wait a second. Then he opened a magic portal called Space Magic. It is an indispensable magic for adventurers that allows you to store things in another dimension. He put his hand into the portal and pulled out a horn. Then he took it and put it on the counter. The girl took out a magnifying glass and began to closely examine the horn, soon saying that it was definitely an antelope horn. He hesitantly put his hand on the back of his head and looking at Lynn said, excellent. The girl shouted at him, nothing excellent. He asked her again in surprise. She shouted at him with a malicious face that the assignment was to kill 30. After that, she ordered him to get 30 antelope horns. A moment later, the entire counter next to her was littered with a huge number of large horns, and she looked at them in horror. MC smilingly told her that she could count them. She angrily asked if he bought them all. He understood that there were people who took orders and bought materials to show off. The girl screamed in rage that otherwise such a weak person with the emblem of non-existence could not have collected 30 horns in one day. He hesitantly answered her that this was not so. MC modestly answered her that in total he had 300 materials. She asked him in horror what. At that moment he laid out a huge, countless number of different body parts of the most diverse monsters. There were paws and wings and claws and feathers. She looked at all this in genuine horror and asked, what is this? He calmly answered her that this was proof of the killing of 300 monsters in the vicinity of the city. MC knew there were many hunting tasks, so he decided to do these at the same time. The girl screamed, what? Then she asked in amazement, firstly, how did he even put all this in the inventory? He answered her calmly, just like everyone else. She thought about the fact that usually an adventurer only has enough space to put one backpack in his inventory. Then he turned to Lena and noticed that it seemed like she was saying something similar too. She cheerfully answered him, yes. Then she noticed that his inventory was amazing. The girl working in the Adventurers Guild was horrified to realize that the MC is incredibly talented. She quickly ran out from behind the counter screaming and ran up to him. She was shaking with fear. She sincerely asked him for forgiveness, bowed deeply. Sweat was running down her face. Her hands were wet. She screamed at him that she had no idea that he was so talented. She said that she had been so rude to him. He looked at her seriously and asked if she thought that the emblem of non-existence is an indicator of weakness. Then he noted that only there are people who do everything to become stronger. She listened to this. I worship him. He showed her his hand, and Lena followed his example and also showed her hand, smiling and telling her to stop judging people by their emblem. She said with tears in her eyes, yes, she will not forget this. Then he asked her hesitantly if he would get a reward for killing 300 monsters. He explained to her that he killed them without a mission because of that. She paused hesitantly and said, yes, of course. There were a lot of materials there, so she asked to wait until they checked everything. He thanked her for that. She counted out loud, claws, wings, fangs, then she said that 10 tasks had been completed in total. It was already night outside. The girl told them that they would pay them 70 gold, after which she handed them a large leather bag, and Yuji and Lena looked at it happily. She shouted at him that she was seeing such money for the first time. He grinned and said that too. Then he turned to the girl and said that in fact he had one more request. She told him, yes, of course. Then she asked what it was. He told her that they would like to register a new group. Lena gave him the appropriate piece of paper, and he wrote the legend with a fountain pen. She said the name of the group is Legend. Then she congratulated them with a smile on her face on the creation of a new group. Yuji turned to Lena and took her hands. He said that with such a name, they will create a group that will not lose to anyone. She cheerfully shouted to him, yes. Holding her hands with his, he pressed his other hand to his chest and invited her to overcome difficulties and share joys together. Tears appeared in her eyes, and she shouted, yes. They went outside, and he noticed that it was already completely dark. She said that she needed to find a place to stay. He asked her if maybe he should buy some new gear before that. She screamed happily and said that it was a great idea. MC remembered how Zenist mockingly shouted at him that good equipment was for those in the vanguard. Then he shouted that cheap rags would be enough for him. At that time, Ark furiously agreed with him, shouting yes. Yuji turned to Lena and said with a frustrated expression that he had never been given good equipment before. She looked at him sympathetically. Then she told him that she understood him. She told him that she also only had D-rank equipment. He asked in surprise, is this D-rank? She looked at her clothes and told him, yes. He began to analyze her through the magic circle. He looked at her chest area. She noticed that when he looked at her like that, she felt awkward. He asked her for forgiveness in fear. Then he told her that he looked at her with analysis and it was not true. She asked him again, to which he replied that the characteristics there were clearly not for D-rank. Lena smiled widely and said, wow. Then she said that he even noticed that. After that, she told him that she made some changes to it. He shouted in surprise, changes? She answered him. With the help of a charm, he opened his mouth and eyes wide and pointed his finger at her and asked, what? She wants to say. She smiled broadly and said that charms can be cast not only on people, but also on things. Then she added that she can do it. He asked her again in shock. Lena looked at him in surprise, and at that moment, he shyly put his hand on the back of his head, realizing that he didn't even think that she was so amazing. Then he turned to her and suggested going shopping. She told him, okay. Soon they came to a clothing and weapons store. Through the glass, you could see several display options of armor and clothing. When they went inside, they saw a huge variety of luxurious swords, beautiful robes, powerful shields, and engraved helmets. She happily shouted that it was her first time in such an expensive store. He looked around with a smile and told her that too. A man with a thin, curled-up mustache, light hair approached him and asked pompously, dear customers? Then he asked them if they had the wrong door. They looked at him in surprise, and then Yuji's face took on a serious look. The man continued to say that they were obviously low-ranking, and this could be seen from a mile away. Then he said that he saw the emblem of inferiority on their hands. Touching his mustache with his fingers, he said that they had a high-ranking equipment store for 40-ranked adventurers. Yuji fiercely handed him a bag of gold coins and opened it. He shouted that he had money. The man looked at him thoughtfully. In an instant, his face changed, and he politely greeted them, calling them dear customers. Then he asked them to come here so that they could pick something for them. Yuji turned to Lena and offered to pick up A-rank equipment for himself. She asked in surprise and shouted, wow. Soon Yuji was dressed in luxurious quality clothes, a black jacket with a black collar. This jacket had additional decorations. He was also wearing a new belt, a new light shirt, and a black cloak. In his hands, he held a beautiful sharp dagger with an engraving. Lena turned to him and asked him how he liked it. He asked her again in surprise, and then was speechless when he saw her. She was wearing stockings, sandals, an incredibly short skirt that exposed her thighs, and she was also wearing a very thin swimsuit that barely covered her chest. An expensive necklace was on her neck, and there were precious ornaments in her hair. She said that this was the recommendation of the store owner. Yuji abruptly pushed her out of there, shouting no. He asked her to try something else. The store owner looked at him with displeasure. Then Lena dressed in different costumes. She tried on a thin, tight dress with patterns. When she put it on, she shouted, "Strike." After that, she dressed in a funny chicken costume and shouted cheerfully. After that, she dressed in a cat costume. She had a hood in the shape of a cat's head, stockings with the image of cat's paws. She also had a tail and gloves in the shape of cat's paws. She meowed while wearing this costume. After that, she dressed in a strict suit consisting of a black business vest. There was a cross on her neck and glasses on her eyes. While wearing this costume, she suggested playing like adults. After all these costumes, she dressed in a short dress, transparent stockings, and a light robe with a bow on her neck. She asked him how he liked it. He smiled looking at her and said that it was very nice and suited her. She told him that she was glad and would take this. He answered her that then they would take this and what he chose. The owner of the store thanked them very much for the purchase. After a while, they entered a simple room where there was a bed, a wooden chair, a wooden table, and a small window. They looked at it in confusion. He apologized to her, explaining that they spent almost everything when buying equipment. She told him that everything was fine and she was not complaining. He asked her if she could cast a spell right now. She told him of course. She looked at his equipment and said that she would enchant it right now. After these words, she used the skill of enhancing enchantments on the equipment that was lying on the wooden table. Yuji sat at the chair near the table and realized that she was strengthening things with magic. He noticed what an amazing power. She exhaled and said that she was finished. He thanked her. Soon he stood happily dressed in new equipment. She told him that for the armor, she cast a defense boost and an evasion boost, also a speed boost. Then she said that she cast a spell on the weapon to increase attack power and increase attack speed. He stood with a smile on his face and examined his clothes. In his hands, he held a dagger. He screamed, "Wow." MC said his body was so light he felt so strong. Then he asked how long this effect would last. She confusedly told him she didn't know. He asked her again. She informed him that the effect on the equipment that she had strengthened 6 months ago was still in effect. He asked her in surprise if this meant that it would last for at least 6 months. Then he asked her with an interested expression, is there a possibility that the enhancement is infinite? Then MC shouted happily, "Amazing, amazing." She told him that she was happy. Then she added that he was the only one who tells her that. Lena was sitting on a bed and he was standing next to her. He was shouting at her that she didn't even realize how amazing she was. Then he added that not only she didn't realize it, but also those around her. She wanted to tell him something, but he continued passionately, saying that this was much more amazing than any other sorcerers. In the mythical age, there were legendary weapons, divine and demonic swords. It couldn't have appeared out of thin air. Someone had created it. He thought that it was created by people like her. He saw everything in the analysis. Such a complex magical process cannot be done by chance. He looked carefully straight into her face, and he told her that she was the best sorcerer in the whole world. She listened to him with wide eyes. He continued to tell her that she had the potential to become the strongest adventurer. Then he said that he was glad that they met. He remembered the girl working in the Adventurers Guild and told her that not everyone realized their strength yet, but they would not give up. He brought his face close to hers. She had tears in her eyes. He told her that they would try together. She, with a smile on her face, told him yes. Then he told her, "Okay, it's time to rest." After that, he said that we need to be ready for tomorrow. She confidently confirmed this thought. A few moments later, they were both lying on the bed. Lena was lying on her back against the wall, and Yuji was lying on his side facing away from her. She had her eyes closed. He turned to her, asking her if maybe he should sleep on the floor. She answered him with her eyes closed, "No," then explained that he needed to get some sleep. He looked at her shyly and hesitantly, said that a girl sleeping with a guy in the same bed. She didn't listen to him and laughed. Then she turned to face him and said that she didn't mind. She was wearing a thin little nightdress. She looked at him carefully and said, if he, at that moment his gaze fell on her lips and chest. He asked again with fear, "Lena?" She told him with a smile that if he sleeps on the floor, then his back will hurt. He embarrassedly and loudly confirmed this, and then laughed loudly. Then she closed her eyes, and he looked at her tenderly. She told him that she would try. He grinned in response. He thought about how he was called inferior. The people he considered his comrades betrayed him. But he understood that now everything was different. A smile appeared on his face. MC thought that they understood each other. He met a real comrade. Lena pressed herself against his back, calling him by name. He turned to her, and with a reddened face told her that he was afraid that he would not get enough sleep. A furious question came from the guild. S-rank quests are not being issued. The girl working in the guild said yes. then explained that it was the guild's decision. After that, she raised her index finger up and said that especially since their group's rank started from C rank. Yuji and Lena looked at her in confusion. She explained to them by telling them that when a new group is created, when people belonging to different groups form a new one, the rank of the new group is assigned according to the lower rank. Yuji's former group was S rank, and Lena's group was C rank. He asked the girl if this meant that because Lin's previous group was C rank, their group was now also C rank. The girl told him that this was true. Lena, in a depressed state, turned to him and told him that it was because of her. Then she, shaking, asked him for forgiveness. He immediately assured her that it was not her fault. The girl noticed with a smile on her face that since Yuji was an S rank, they had access to accelerated rank up. She then went on to say that they can increase their rank after each task. They only need to complete 3 tasks, and they will be at rank S. To do this, they just need to take the task for promotion each time. Yuji said that this was a great opportunity. Then he said that they shouldn't lose heart. Lena asked him again, uncertainly, to which he added that they would not rush. They would work with such equipment for the first time. He added that they needed to get used to it, after which he said that because of this they would take simple tasks for now. Lena, with a smile on her face, told him okay. After these words, she rushed to him and hugged him by the hand, shouting that this is why she loves him. He looked at her confused and embarrassed. He turned to himself, telling him not to make things up. He assured himself that she didn't mean it that way. He asked himself not to understand her incorrectly. Yes. The girl holding the task sheet told them that there was a task to clear 30 monsters around Lake Sandville. Then she explained to them that it was a great place for a date. Yuji furiously shouted at her that she had misunderstood. Soon they were on a hill near the lakes. With Anvil, it was a large lake between high mountains. It was surrounded by tall, coniferous trees. They stood on a hill. Because of this, they could clearly see the surrounding expanses consisting of many trees, a lonely wooden house, thick clouds, and a cozy lake. He turned to Lena and with a smile on his face suggested that they split up and begin. She obediently shouted, okay. Then she said that she would try. He thought hard about it not being a date. She turned to him and asked him to let her cast a spell on him first. He told her okay, then thanked her very much. Soon magical energy began to circle around him and the earth. He thought that it was a spell. He felt the power in his body. He understood that it was much more powerful than potions. It is customary to say that if there are potions, then sorcerers are no longer needed. However, he understood that the power of a real sorcerer is amazing. At that moment, she told him that she was finished and then added that the effect would wear off in an hour. He asked again in surprise, a whole hour? Then he said that the effect of the potion wears off very quickly. She answered him in confusion that she didn't know, since she had never used potions. He realized that Lena's abilities were truly a miracle. He offered her to start. After a while, various monsters were attacked by him with his dagger. It was a wolf monster, a slime monster, and a powerful bird with a big head and sharp claws. He hit all the targets in a jump. He looked confidently at the dagger that was in front of his face and mentally thanked Lin's enhancement, noticing that his body was so light and fast. Then he started collecting materials. He collected flesh elements from each of the defeated monsters. He thought that everything was going better than he had planned. He noticed that they would finish much faster. He squatted with a smile on his face. Suddenly, he heard a warlike cry. He thought in fear, Lena. After that, he instantly used the skill detection. Lena was lying on the ground, with mucus on her head, chest, and thighs. She called these cowards because they attacked at once. She then stood up and started swinging her sword furiously, causing the slimes to fly away from her. She was screaming at them to get it. Yuji saw this thanks to his discovery. He thought she was smart. Then he looked in front of him and said that he had collected about 20 pieces. Saying this, he put the monster feathers into his inventory. He shouted Lena and asked how she was doing. She was far from him. He saw her standing on the hill. She shouted at him, asking him to forgive her. Then she explained that she only had 5. He shouted at her no. Then he told her that she was great, after which he suggested finishing off the last ones together. Suddenly, his expression changed. He looked gloomily ahead. A tornado began to swirl above them. Lena looked up and, covering her face from the fierce wind, said that the weather had suddenly gotten worse. He shouted to her in fear what it was. He himself was thinking about the fact that he had once seen something like that. MC shouted loudly to her that things were bad. After that, he used skill analysis. He thought that it was different from other monsters. The size of the magical power was on a completely different level. He looked up and saw an ominous grimace, something that was looking at him from above. He looked at it with fear and thought that he had thought so. Suddenly, a strong blow hit the ground near them. Lena screamed in surprise. Yuji was shouting at her to run. She asked him, what is it? S-rank group needed to be sent here urgently. She asked him again in surprise. At that moment, a huge foot of a monster with wide and sharp claws stepped on the ground. Yuji thought that it was too dangerous. Many adventurers had died from such. He understood that even for a D-rank group, such creatures were dangerous. Lena looked above herself in fear at that moment. That monster was a walking disaster. Yuji shouted, "Zone boss." A monster of enormous eyes looked like a muscular gargoyle. It had huge horns on its head, large protruding ears, a long sharp tongue, and many curved pointed fangs. It was squatting surrounded by a raging wind. It had large terrifying wings. The monster looked ahead, and with an ominous roar hit Lena with such force that the ground shook beneath her. She flew far away from such a blow. MC screamed furiously, "Lena." After that, he cursed loudly, thinking that you can't go to such a monster with a dagger. He thought that then attack magic is needed, but he understood that the emblem of nothingness does not have any sensible magic. However, he knew that he could use all the elements. Maybe, but the fire emblem is good at fire magic. He could use fire magic, but it didn't work out very well. This is one of the reasons why the emblem of nothingness is ridiculed. However, he knew that he had to do it. He needed to concentrate. Thinking about this, he formed a magical cloud of energy in his right hand and looked ahead with fury. The monster turned to him and growled belligerently. Yuji realized with fear that it had noticed him. A moment later, the monster dealt a powerful blow that destroyed the hill on which Yuji stood. He cursed as he looked into the eyes of the monster that was approaching him. After a few seconds, he asked himself in surprise, "What?" MC noticed that it became slower. He looked at it in surprise and realized that it was Lena debuff. She screamed at him that she had weakened it, cast magical energy in his hands again. He looked at her with a smile and shouted to her, "Thank you." He ordered himself to concentrate. He shouted confidently at himself to concentrate. Lena looked at him in surprise, realizing that this was attack magic. However, she understood that the healer had weak attack magic. She looked at him thoughtfully, seeing how he furiously rushed towards the monster with a cloud of magical energy. Yuji ran up to the monster, shouting for him to get it. He threw a large fireball at the monster. The monster looked at this with a smile. And after a few moments, there was a deafening explosion. It was a big explosion that covered the entire monster with its wave. Only its outstretched paws were visible. They looked at it exploding. Lena looked at Yuji, realizing that he was simply amazing. The monster was gone, and in the place where it stood, a shallow crater was formed. Everything in the area of the explosion was destroyed. On the ground lay the head of a monster with steam coming from it. Yuji hurriedly ran up to Lena, asking if she was hurt. She stood in front of him and told him yes. And then she asked him the same thing that he, with a smile on his face, told her that it was because of her. After that, he thanked her. She, with her mouth and eyes wide open, said, "No." Then he added that he did nothing. After that, she sure shouted at him that he was simply amazing. MC quickly assured her that it was not so. He said that it was all thanks to her. She denied it, saying that it was all just because he was strong. After that, they began to convince each other. Soon they laughed and decided that it was their joint efforts. Lena agreed with this. Then he started to stroke the back of his head, saying that he was glad that he had succeeded. Then he added that in fact he was bad at attack magic. Lena told him that he had won with one spell. Then she asked him loudly, in his opinion, "Is that bad?" He apologized to her and said that he had expressed himself incorrectly. She asked him again in surprise. He told her with a smile on his face that he had power, but he was bad at controlling it. He explained that he could have accidentally dried up this lake. She asked him again in furious incomprehension. She thought that he was too strong and simply amazing. At that moment, he approached the head of the monster he had recently defeated lying on the ground. Picking it up, he said that they needed to inform the guild that they had defeated the local boss monster. Lena looked at him tenderly and thought about how glad she was that she was able to meet him. At that moment, Yuji raised the monster's head and, smiling, looked at her and shouted that they would definitely be paid a lot. After some time, they were already entering the city. He turned to her with a smile and said that they would take the reward and stay in an expensive hotel. She confirmed this proposal with a smile on her face, saying that although she was not against the previous one. Yuji shouted discontentedly that it was impossible to get a good night's sleep there. Lena answered him in confusion. Okay. Then she walked behind him and said that she would leave the choice to him. Suddenly a voice from behind addressed them, calling his name. This voice asked if he was a former member of the Death Flag Yuji. They turned around in surprise. Yuji asked again, and she? The girl was standing on a city street. It was an adult girl with long, lush hair down her waist. She was dressed in a black and white dress. On her neck was a neat bow with a stone. She was wearing white shoes. On her legs were black pancake stockings. Behind her back was visible a black cloak. She had big eyes, bright black eyelashes, miniature nose's mouth. Her eyebrows were thin and bright black. The girl said that her name was Helmina. She kept her hands on her stomach. Then she said that she was the current healer of the death flag. Yuji mentally repeated what she had just said, the current caretaker of Hellman's death flag. He used the skill analysis by applying a circle of magical energy to his eye, after which he looked closely at her and realized that she was really strong. Lena asked in surprise, "What kind of death flag is this?" He stretched out his arms to the sides and said that this was the group he used to be in. Then he added that, to be honest, they were very bad people. He turned to Helmina and told her that she clearly didn't fit in there. She laughed in response. Then she put her hand to her chin and, looking at him piercingly, said that the main thing was that she got paid. He looked at her with a smile and said, "I understand." They stood opposite each other, and Helmina said, "The healer with the emblem of the Inferior." She told him what they told about him. After a pause, she asked if it was true. He answered her yes. After that, he stretched his hand up and showed her the emblem, saying that he had the emblem of non-existence. Helmina looked at this carefully. They were interrupted by loud laughter from the side. A voice asked him if he was bragging. It was Zenith and Arc dressed in rich plate armor. They were all in armor except for their heads. On their belts were powerful belts. Zenith was dressed better than Arc. He had a collar of animal fur. Behind him was a wide cloak, and on his belt was a flag with a coat of arms. He asked him with a smile if he had bought himself equipment and got a girlfriend. Then he shouted at him that this will not save him from the emblem of the Inferior. After that, he laughed loudly. Arc stood behind him and, being in a slouched position, said "So him." Yuji looked at him sternly and said his name, Zenith. He told him to stay away from Helmina. He explained that he might bring bad luck to her with his emblem. Then he came very close to Hellman's face and with a twisted expression shouted that she, unlike him, had a holy emblem. He grabbed her hand in his and showed her hand. Then he shouted that she was a worthy healer. The holy emblem enhances holy element magic and is compatible with healing magic. Helmina furiously shouted at him not to touch her, after which she abruptly pulled her hand back. He laughed and asked her for forgiveness. Then he turned to Yuji and asked him if he understood. He shouted at him not to approach her. Arc, with his mouth wide open, shouted at him to forget about them. After that, he shouted at him that he was inferior. Helmina stood motionless at that moment with a stern and displeased expression on her face. Then she closed her eyes and said how pathetic they were. They laughed, asking him if they heard what she called them. After that, they turned to Helmina and told her to go. They turned around, and Helmina waved her hand at them, telling Yuji that they would see each other again. Zenith asked again, confused, "See each other?" Then he asked displeasedly, why did she want to see him? When they were leaving to the side, Zenith said that he heard that the boss had appeared there. He was just about to destroy it when it disappeared. Arc answered him that it was strange, since it disappeared as soon as it appeared. When they left, Lena asked irritably, "Are these his former comrades?" Then she said, "What a horror." After that, she asked him, confused, how he even tolerated them. He answered her with a smile that anger only makes you tired. Then she shouted at him about how that girl called them pathetic. He looked at her with a smile and calmly told her, no. Then he explained that she was not talking about them. Lena asked him again in surprise. He answered her with a proposal that they go to the guild. She agreed with him, shouting to him, "Okay." When they entered the Adventurers Guild building, the girl working there greeted them and said, "Welcome back," with a smile on her face. She then said that it seemed like they had a quest to kill 30 monsters in the area around the lake. At that moment, Yuji took out the huge head of the defeated boss from his inventory and placed it on the floor. This head was the size of a person and was simply enormous, especially in the room. The girl asked in fear, "Isn't it?" The girl ran up to the head in fear, asking if it was really that. Yuji interrupted her and said that it was like the boss. She shouted to him that she noticed. Then she looked at him with a stern expression and said that around noon, the magic crystal in the guild felt a powerful fluctuation in magical power. The black reaction is a sign of the location boss appearing. She said that they were going to send S-class adventurers there. She remembered how several people looked at a cloud of magical energy within a certain structure and shouted, "It's the boss." Another man added that it's on the lake. The girl continued her story, saying that then the light disappeared and they tried to find the reason. The men standing near this structure asked in bewilderment what happened. Then she asked in surprise, so it was because they both defeated it? Yuji and Lena looked at her in confusion. He said that it appeared before their eyes and they had no choice but to fight. Then he turned to Lena and told her that they were lucky, that it was weak and they were able to win together. Lena answered him, "Right." The girl in shock asked them, "What?" Then she screamed furiously, "What are they saying?" She screamed, "It's a gargoyle." Then she explained that it was a powerful monster that once destroyed a village here. Then she spread her arms out furiously and shouted that it was incredibly dangerous. They asked her again in bewilderment. The men who were in the guild asked in confusion, "A gargoyle?" They defeated a gargoyle. The other adventurers asked again. Are they serious? Together, one of the adventurers said that he did not believe it. It was the boss of the location. Yuji quietly turned to the girl and asked, "Is the reward for this big?" She shouted to him, "Of course." Then she clarified that, however, the exact calculation of the reward will take some time, so they will reward them a little later. A short man with a thick beard and a helmet with horns turned to him and said that he knew him. Then he said that he was the guy with the emblem of nothingness who was expelled from the group by Zenist. Yuji hesitantly answered that, yes, it was him. The man asked, "Does it mean that this girl helped him?" Lena looked at him in confusion, then showed her hand and said that it also had the emblem of nothingness. The adventurers surrounding them asked in bewilderment, "Really?" One of the adventurers shouted furiously that the inferiors had defeated the boss in the location. They were screaming, "Wow." Yuji remembered how not long ago these same adventurers called him inferior, useless, the weakest of adventurers. He remembered how they insulted him in every way, and now they were shouting in admiration. Wow, the emblem of non-existence. People were shouting in surprise. They were delighted. Yuji and Lena looked at the applause surrounding them in surprise. The adventurers started running up to them and asking if he would join their group. Another man interrupted him and told him to go to them instead. Another man offered to go with them. Then he added that they had the best adventures. One of the men approached Lena and, turning to her, offered her to go with them. She confusedly replied that she refused. Yuji took her hand, and he shouted to her, offering to go. She cheerfully answered him yes. After that, they ran through the crowd of adventurers surrounding them. They went out into the city, and Yuji noticed that suddenly the attitude towards them had changed so much. She said with a smile on her face, "Exactly." She smiled and said that everything was just as he said. He was surprised and asked her again. She reminded him how he said that they would try together. She said that it was all because he said that they should not give up. He answered uncertainly that it was probably so. After that, he took her hand and raised it high, shouting that they will keep trying. She happily shouted yes. Then he suddenly realized and apologized to her for holding her hand all this time. He abruptly let go of her hand. She turned around and said that she didn't mind. Then she said that she even liked it. MC asked her in surprise, to which she suddenly turned around and shouted that he hadn't heard anything. He then asked her if she had bought a magic power potion. That's the potion that restores magic power. She told him yes. Then she said that it was very important to keep track of the amount. She looked ahead in surprise and fear. He looked at her and asked what was going on. 3 dark figures appeared in front of them. When they came closer, they saw 3 girls. One of them had dark skin and was incredibly muscular. She was dressed in metal armor and a tight skirt. She had black, disheveled hair, and she held a huge axe behind her back. The girl in the middle had a large black bow on her head and light hair. She was dressed in leather armor. She had a long sword behind her belt. She was dressed in black stockings and long white boots. A long dark cloak hung on her shoulders. The third girl was dressed in a jacket with a hood. She had dark hair and long bangs. There were decorations on her chest. The girls ran up and shouted loudly, "Lena," and they asked if it was her. Lena asked them again in surprise. The girl with the light hair and dark bow asked where she was. Then he shouted that they were worried. Lena answered confusedly that they themselves kicked her out of the group. Yuji looked gloomily, realizing that it was them. He remembered how at their first meeting she told him that she thought that they were her comrades, and she was just a disposable. He realized that these were her former comrades. The girl with blonde hair hugged her. The other girl said it was a misunderstanding. Bad joke. The girl hugging her said it was true. Then she called her lost. The muscular girl said they needed her. Lena asked again in surprise what. The girl with blonde hair looked her in the eyes and asked her if she's still a useful member of the group. Really? Lena looked at her in confusion, not knowing what to answer. A sorcerer, and she could still be useful in many places. They offered her to go, shouting that they would be for again. Lena denied it uncertainly, while Yuji looked at her attentively with a smile on his face. She remembered their first meeting, remembered her changing clothes in the equipment store, remembered him furiously attacking the gargoyle. She remembered how he suggested that they overcome difficulties and share joy together. Lena ran up to him and said that she would travel with Yuji. Then she confidently told them that she would not return to them. Yuji looked at her in confusion. The blonde girl called her poor thing, then said that he was clearly cheating on her. She looked at her intently and said so that she wouldn't worry. With him, even the emblem of the inferior will be useful, and he will get rid of it. Lena shouted to them that he doesn't tell her such things. The girl grinned. Lena, looking at them, said that he does not say that she is inferior or that he uses her and that she causes him trouble. She, with tears in her eyes, shouted that he does not look down on her. Then she turned to him and said that he always only supports her. She looked at him with tears in her eyes and asked if he would mind traveling with her. Would he? He looked at her with a smile and said, "Of course." A loud scream came from behind them. "Lena!" The The girl with blonde hair took her sword out of its sheath and pointed it towards Yuji. She shouted that it seemed like he had seriously confused her. She asked her again in surprise, what? The girl with the sword in her hand screamed, asking, he would still use her instead of a potion, right? Then she furiously asked him, otherwise why else would he combine with an inferior one? She called him a stupid man and said, come on. He looked her straight in the eyes sternly and said that he would not treat anyone like that. She angrily asked him if he was trying to be cool. After that, she raised the sword over his head and was about to hit him, but Lena suddenly jumped on her at the moment of impact, which caused her to cut the skin on her cheek. Yuji screamed in fear, Lena. She was lying on the ground. He ran up to her and asked if she was okay. The girl asked her menacingly what she was doing. After that, she called her a fool and said that she just wanted to scare him. Lena was crying, looking down. Blood was running down her cheeks. Yuji used a healing magic skill on her cheek. She looked ahead in surprise. He straightened up and sternly looked at her and asked, is this the one who wounded his comrade? The girl who cut Lena's cheek asked him again with a challenge. She said mockingly that Lena herself was to blame for throwing herself under the sword. Then she added that the inferior apparently all rush to the next world. Yuji gritted his teeth and told her to shut up. The girl asked again with a frightened look. She thought, what's wrong with him? MC clenched his fist, and she noticed that he, like Lena, was also a bearer of the emblem of non-existence. Yuji raised his hand and shouted. If they were laughing at him, he would have endured it. But if they were going to harm his comrades? The girl thought fearfully that he was a scum with an inferiority emblem, but still. Yuji made a cross with his fingers and said, I will not forgive. The girl at that moment wondered what kind of pressure was coming from him. They were frightened and wondered if he, too, was really inferior. At that moment, the guild administrator reported to the guild master. He shouted questioningly, emblems of oblivion, the winners of the location boss? The girl answered correctly. Beads of sweat appeared on her face from excitement, and she continued to say their group name, legend, leader, healer Yuji. Then she added that he was also helped by the sorcerer Lena. Together, they defeated the boss. The guild master, reading the report, shouted that if it was true, they couldn't be released. The administrator agreed in fear. He folded his hands in front of him and with a serious look said that he wanted to meet them, asking her to arrange it. A serious person became interested in the heroes, and this is the guild master Klein. The girl said she understood everything. And at that moment, girl stood on the street angrily and looked at Yuji. The dark-haired little girl crouched down and said, body. The girl with the axe said she couldn't move. Containment healing was said by MC. The girls asked again what? Yuji shouted that he had used the magical power of healing to prevent them from moving. He then added that he had used his skill, analysis, to do so. He analyzed their nervous system and affected their nerves so they could not move. Asked angrily what? What kind of restraining healing? I've never heard of such a healing. The blonde girl, holding a dagger in her hands, asked angrily, what the? Then she added, where did Lena get such a comrade? Then she continued, Lena is inferior. And then she asked Yuji, do you know? At that moment, Lena started to cry. He replied that he himself had the emblem of non-existence, and he was the same. The same? They asked. Then they added, you are much stronger than her. MC is the same. They just don't understand. How what? They asked again. Yuji put his hand on his heart and said, it hurts me too. He also suffered abuse from those around him and understands very well the pain and sadness she had to go through. That's why he is a much better companion for her, because they care about each other. At that moment, Lena cried and said his name. The girls stood there with stony faces, and then the blonde girl smirked. She screamed, what pain? I don't understand anything. Yuji gritted his teeth and said, don't they understand that they are in pain too? The blonde shouted with a smile, of course. She will never understand the pain of the inferior. MC at this moment started casting a spell and furiously said that he would show what Lena felt. Horror swept across the girls' faces. They began to feel every moment of insults towards Lena on themselves. The girl shouted no. The dark-haired girl asked to stop. The girl with the axe screamed that she couldn't. The blonde, sobbing, begged not to be insulted. Lena asked indignantly what he had done to them. He asked not to worry. He had simply taught them a lesson. She asked again in surprise. She put her finger to her mouth and asked, did you let them feel your and my mental pain? Yuji explained to her that his magic could work on pain itself. Then he added that full recovery is a state where there is no pain. There's not only physical pain, but also mental pain. He knows the structure of pain, and therefore can reproduce mental pain. There are many different types of mental pain, and having understood its cause, he can reproduce it. The girls were in pain. Yuji says that now they are experiencing the same thing as Lena. My pain, she said. He explained to her that he couldn't really reproduce it if there was no memory of it. Then he added that the three had been torturing her. so they remember what kind of pain it was. They could hear the screams of girls behind them. It was already night outside. The girls were getting up from their knees. The blonde asked, "How dare he?" Yuji asked, "Well." Then he added, "Now do they understand Lena's pain at least a little?" The blonde asked angrily. She shouted, "Lena." At that moment, they all rushed to her crying and hugging her, each of the girls asking her for forgiveness. They couldn't believe that she felt so bad, and it was all because of them. Lena was very happy. The girls asked if she would forgive them. Lena said she would forgive them. Then she asked to let her go. Yuji watched this whole picture and realized that the result was more powerful than he expected. The blonde said that they could atone for all their sins if Lena went with them again. The girl said, "Lena, thank you, but I'll refuse." Yuji with a smile. She said that she wanted to travel with him. The blonde said that they understood. They thanked her and asked for her forgiveness and wished her luck. Lena reciprocated. Yuji was clearly pleased with himself. They walked down a dark street. He asked Lin for forgiveness. Because of him, she had to say goodbye to her teammates. She smiled and told him not to apologize. Thanks to him, she was able to make peace with them. Then she added that she had decided to travel with him. "Really?" he asked. She said indignantly, "He saved her." He answered yes, because they were comrades. Then she said that it was before they met. He answered that a healer cannot abandon a wounded person. She took his hand and said that it was not about that. He asked again in surprise. Lena was touched and said that he healed her body and mind. MC is the best healer. One day, she will save him. She took his arm. He asked in surprise, "What?" Lena told him not to pay attention. Morning came. The roosters were already crowing loudly, and people were wandering along the street. Our heroes were in the hotel. Yuji woke up and yawned loudly. He laughed, ran his hand through his hair, and said that he slept better alone in a bed. Zenith had never given him a bed before. Holding his head with his hand, he decided to move his other hand and accidentally placed it on Lin's thigh. His gaze froze. He turned around and saw Lena in bed and indignantly said her name, waking her up. She woke up and wished him good morning. Yuji indignantly pointed at the neighboring bed and said that her place was there. Lena replied that she had gone to the toilet at night and had accidentally gone to bed in the wrong bed. Yuji shouted that this was not right. They should sleep in separate beds. She was touched, crawled up to him, and asked for forgiveness. Then she asked if he was angry. She was wearing a short nightgown. Her huge breasts were slightly visible and her bare thighs were visible. He was taken aback by her appearance and shouted that he was not angry. Yuji asked her to forget about it. They had to go to the guild for the reward. She answered well. On the way to the guild, people around them noticed them and praised them. One man said, "This is the couple who defeated the gargoyle." Another man in armor said, "These guys have a cool emblem of nothingness." Yuji said sheepishly that the rumors had spread. Lena replied with a smile that she didn't know whether to be happy about them. At the entrance, they were greeted joyfully by the administrator. She wished them a good morning. The boys reciprocated. Then Yuji said that they came for the award. The girls said that they would have an important conversation. The guys stood there in bewilderment. She headed up the stairs. Yuji asked, "Is something wrong? Is it because of the reward?" They came to a huge wooden door. The administrator said that she had brought a group, a legend. The voice behind the door allowed them to enter. Yuji said worriedly, "Really?" Then he added this office. Klein appeared before them. He was standing next to the table. He greeted the guys, introduced himself to them. Yuji bowed to him and said that there was not a single person in Sandville who did not know Mr. Klein. He then added that he did not expect it and asked why he needed them. At this time, in the background, Lena was shocked and asked the administrator if this was the real guild master, to which the administrator said yes. He sat them down on the sofa, stood at a distance, laughed, and told them not to strain themselves. Klein took the report in his hands, sat down in front of the couple, and said that as a reward for the boss, they wanted to pay them 1,500 gold. All he needed was their signature. He asked them if they would sign it. Yuji answered with a smile. "Right, Lena?" he asked. She said in shock, "Yes, a whole 1,500 gold." Klein smiled and said that was not all. Then he added that there was something else. He said, "Fight me, Yuji." MC asked again in shock. Klein said he knew the gargoyle was defeated with powerful attack magic. He also knows that Lena doesn't get along with offensive magic, so that only leaves Yuji. He pointed his finger at MC and told him to show his power. Yuji smiled and asked if even the guild master himself decided to challenge the inferior. Klein chuckled and said, "Don't be modest, you can't fool my eyes. You are an S-rank adventurer," Klein said with a serious face. He looked at Yuji and said that he had even surpassed the limits of the healer class. Then he asked, "Right?" Continued follows. Thanks for watching. Write your feedback in the comments. If you like the story, please like and subscribe. See you soon.